Welcome everyone. This is Danny and Karl with GetWisdom, and we're continuing with the channeling series. And today Karl is going to channel John Denver, who is an iconic figure from the 70s and 80s and 90s. He was a very successful solo artist and had quite a fan base. And you will have seen a little short bio of him before we get to this portion of the video. And he was an interesting fellow in many regards. And I was just discussing with Karl that my wife Jen actually had an opportunity to meet him. I think it was in shortly before he passed away, because we used to live down in the Monterey Bay area where his plane crashed. I think it was in 1997. So we've got 6 questions for him today, and Karl and I will have a little discussion about him as a channeling subject and about channeling in general, and then we'll get started. Thanks, Karl.
Thank you, Denny. Yes, Denver was one of those people who, in a way, didn't fit, but for not the reasons people might assume. He did a lot of things that were spiritual in nature, and that made him somewhat of an odd duck in today's world because it's so secular and continues to be so. There's this drift away from organized religion, and people are beginning to feel that's passe. And he did things that put him right foursquare on the side of the Almighty in a traditional sense and traditional settings, with his participation in the movies about God and the musical endeavors that he did, and his humanitarian work. It was always very much focused on wanting to line up with something truly spiritual, meaning allied with God in a direct way, and not a kind of a pseudo way, as a lot of people do in the New Age movement. So he was dismissed by a lot of people because he seemed to kind of be naive and, I won't use the word simple minded, but that's often kind of what people think. Oh, this guy's never grown up, and boy, is that such a wrong perspective, because it isn't complicated. It isn't beyond our reach to be spiritual. It's very simple and elemental faith in the higher power and having a sense of its presence in everything. And that changes how you think. And it's not a bizarre, complex quantum physics interaction. It's an energy of consciousness, and it's actually living inside us. And it sees everything we do. It watches us all day and takes part in our lives, but in the background, unless we want it to participate more. And then we can have more of a sort of a divine touch that can inform us when we need to learn and grow in a certain way. And we're inviting that, guide us when we're struggling with a decision, and offer us ideas and maybe a new way of thinking about something, not to control it, but to give an offering of love with further knowledge and awareness of possibilities. That's how the divine realm operates. We're in a free will paradigm. So he was such a wonderful person, and that's how I think of him first.
You mentioned he's kind of an odd duck, and he did try to reach out and create a community within the music world, but in some areas there and elsewhere he was thwarted. For instance, when I was researching the questions, I found out that he wanted to participate in the big musical "We Are the World." Do you remember that, when all the
Yes, I
musicians got
do.
together?
I do.
Well, he
Michael
wanted to,
Jackson. Yeah.
right, and they turned him down. They said it would send the wrong message to have him included.
Yeah.
And I guess his agent or his producer or whatever, or the producer of that song, disagreed with that, but he went with the other artists and he wasn't allowed to participate. And another thing that was kind of interesting is he he took um, the NASA physical exam for astronauts, and he passed. And he wanted to be in this group of citizens that got to go up in the space shuttle, and he was turned down for that as well.
Yeah, he would have been a good candidate, I think, because of his aviation interests and his enthusiasm and being an advocate and supporter of it all, and also being a communicator. He was an artist and communicated that way, but he also was plain spoken and genuine. And I guess this says something when you don't want a plain spoken, genuine advocate in your team. What is the agenda? I guess is one thing that I would ask. So I don't want to read too much into that, but
Yeah,
it's interesting, and
yeah,
and it speaks to a lot of different competing ideas and agendas. That's always what's going on.
yeah,
That exercise, that we are the world thing. When I saw it, I thought, well, this is nice. They're wanting to do something nice,
yeah,
but what? It's just a song. And the message was very vague to me. It was a very vague one. We are the world, we are the children, and okay, let's make nice and be happy. And, and now what, and
yeah,
so anyway, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade unnecessarily, but I'm not surprised that he was not embraced wildly by other artistic members of that community, because so many of them become cynical, and there's a lot of ego there, but also there's a corruption. We know this now, that
right,
artists are relentlessly attacked, and every effort made to undermine them, to corrupt their thinking and manipulate how they do their work and limit their effectiveness.
right, and even in some cases, give them a short life.
Yes, yes. And one of the ways they're controlled is to keep them away from people who are more enlightened. You can't have that.
Right.
You've got to hang with the drug using, drinking, kind of sex focused groups that are not really looking for upliftment in a spiritual sense, or wanting to do something of a humanitarian nature. Truly,
Yeah.
they might sign on to an enterprise like that song for the cachet. They're hanging out with the big
Yeah,
name
it's emphasis on
artists.
feel good, but when it comes to actually doing something, then that's where things kind of fall apart and go by something
Yeah,
else happens.
yeah.
So the
So
energy is expended on the feel good part.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and it's sort of like taking part in a Christmas pageant or something. I mean, just coming in and singing a Christmas song, and then you're gone, and it's a token representation, but almost like a cameo appearance, where
Hmm.
you're, you're not there for substance. You're just there for
Yeah.
your face, your voice,
Yeah.
and you have your few minutes on camera. And so anyway, but Denver did some really good work and some projects that I think will stand
Yeah.
for a long, long time. And his music as well. He was a tunesmith and spiritually tapped in. That's my belief.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I learned when I was researching for the questions was his his inroads in the music business was a song he wrote that Peter, Paul, and Mary made famous, "Leaving on a Jet Plane." He
Oh,
wrote that song.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was his. That's how he got his in with the radio shows, and he actually toured by himself, handed out posters by himself in different college towns and stuff, and then would perform for free, and then he would do interviews and get radio time. So by the time he got his record contract, he'd already done all the shoe leather work on his own to build up his own fan base, and he already had the credentials of having written that hit song, and so that's how he got his first record deal. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's
he
remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, and that now it's virtually impossible to break into the music business that way now. There may be some corollaries. Probably YouTube would be a good example of how someone by themselves could get out there and build up a fan base. But he in those days that was an unusual way to go about getting a record deal, and it
Yeah.
took a lot of work, and you had to be resourceful and kind of like wear a lot of different hats just besides writing music, or performing music. So he was kind of a trades. I mean, he had a lot of skills.
Well,
Um,
yes, and he was kind of complete in having the savvy to make a commercial impact the hard way.
yeah.
Very few artists could do that.
Yep.
They don't have that business sense
Right.
and understanding promotion and marketing and so on.
Right.
But he was he was a bright guy and very dedicated and extremely talented. And I guess I would argue that that is more than anything else what carried the day. He had the right stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just he showed up and worked hard.
Yeah.
He had the goods.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there are so many phenomenal artists who never make it, never
Yeah.
get recognized, never have their big break,
Boy,
their
that's the truth.
opportunity. So there's something about what goes on inside of them and the energies and the universe that conspire to create those opportunities or block them. A lot of it is within the person themselves, and that's a whole other discussion. But I think he was very in divine alignment in much of his life in many ways, and it showed. And I think that was behind this also, that there was a plan for him, that
Yeah.
he was here to contribute to the divine um, advancement of things and the awareness in people and bringing back into the fold a bit. And that's the problem we're faced with right now. And what we're all about at GetWisdom, helping bring people back to the fold, if assuming they've had some exposure to the idea of faith and religion in some form. And it's not an easy thing to do. People aren't actively looking specifically for that.
Yeah.
They might be yearning inside for something deeper and wanting more fulfillment, but they don't think about it in terms of God or religion. That seems kind of static and more like a kind of an old-fashioned practice that
it's not part of the
more
question.
an inconvenience than
Yeah.
they're not thinking they can get something out of it.
Right.
It's more like what you're supposed to do. Go and worship. And
it's already proven to be a dead end, historically speaking.
That's how people see it. I think.
Right.
It doesn't work. Prayer is a false promise, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So it's we continually need to have spokespersons for the divine among us to keep us going. And the artists fill a big hole by bringing inspiration to us, the beauty of music and the loftiness of many of the lyrics. And just even promoting love is a spiritual act because that is the divine currency. So he was quite a spokesperson in everything that he did.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 6 questions for him today. So maybe with a little introduction, we can go ahead and get started.
All right, sounds good. I'm looking forward to this. I'm a big fan and love the guy. He's wonderful in my book, and I have great admiration for him. But aside from that, we have important questions and issues that I think he can touch on. So when I do my channeling, I do it in a very spiritual way by going first to the creator of all that is, to ask it to connect me to my target. and to guarantee safety and put protection in place so that it can't be interfered with. And this is something very, very important channelers, by and large, do not do. And the risk is they will get an answer to their outreach, but it will be a lower level being, an imposter of some kind. And the landscape is rife with these kinds of false collaborations. And who they end up talking with will talk a good game. They'll have things to share. They'll give the person something that seems to be a good answer to what they're asking. But if you follow it over a length of time, you'll see that it is kind of superficial. It's kind of generalities, mostly focused on sweetness and light and upliftment, but not getting into serious matters, problem solving, healing, what's wrong with the world and why, what's truly happening. And to have as an answer, well, we need enlightenment, we need ascension, and then everything's going to be wonderful. That's no answer. That's a vague generality and an assumption and a kind of wishful thinking that someone's going to take care of this for us, and there's nothing much we need to do. And that's what people typically get from the channelings. You know, this is more a metaphysical thing going on out there somewhere, and we're more spectators than anything. And
right.
we have to be in alignment. We have to, think positively and avoid the negative and so on. But that's a trap, because there's a lot of negativity we need to understand. We need to come to grips with.
Right.
Otherwise, the world's not going to change for the better.
The healing needs to come first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're in charge of this place, not some mysterious ascension process, nor even the Almighty. The Almighty has made that very clear, that we have free agency and free will. And God stands aside and watches, is available to us, but only if we ask for help. So that's what we're doing with our channeling. We're going up to that highest astral plane to talk with the people who have been here and been a part of the human enterprise. And looking back, can reflect on all that happened and give us some insight about the difference between here and there. And how do we bring those two realms more closely together in how we comport ourselves and what that might mean. And we've given many teachings about this, and many light beings have instructed us about this perspective. And each person contributes in some way, because they all have their personal karmic history and their passions, their particular focus, especially when it comes to the earth plane and the things most near and dear to them about what they've gone through and how they would like to see things improve and so on. So that's what we're after here. Like that loftier view, from the high ground, looking back down at the earth, and to help inspire us and educate us and give us some guidance in how we might shape our own thinking. This is always an offering. It's never an order or a manipulation. It's an offering of insight and wisdom. And so that's why people have to be after truth if they're going to reach out. Don't start with an assumption and a be-all, end-all kind of belief that you think you know everything. Because even if you're lucky enough to connect to a divine being, it can't give you any more, because you've already decided you know it all. That's how they work. They won't call you out. They won't point out your flaws and tell you what's wrong with your thinking and your ideas and tell you what you need to know. That can come only if you're open and make a direct request question something and ask for an answer
Okay.
and make it in a heartfelt interchange, then they can give you a little bit more to go on and take you ahead, at least incrementally. They can't revolutionize, jump way out in front of you, and open up a whole new category of knowledge for you. It's taken me years to put together all the information that I know presently. They could have said much of it on day one if I'd had the ability to keep channeling for 96 hours or something. I would have gotten a lot of the basic principles and critical facts relayed to me. But they don't operate that way. That would be manipulating, controlling. So that's the difference. You have to look at what the channeler is bringing, what it is they're asking, and who they are, and what are their beliefs, because that will be a big part of what comes forth.
Okay.
All right. So I will take a few moments to get in the state of consciousness I need and connect to Mr. Denver, and then he will announce when he is here.
Okay.
This is John Denver speaking.
Thank you for joining us. Were you able to transition successfully? And was your accident due to the fuel switch placement and pilot error as reported?
I was able to transition safely, and that was a blessing of my spiritual alignment. Your characterization of me in the introduction is broadly accurate. I did hold a deep, deep love of the divine within my heart. Like every person, it was not always front and center in my thinking. This is the difficulty humans all have. It is hard to keep divine principles uppermost in every kind of human interaction because there are many distractions, many complexities, many uncertainties, and human frailties, largely the problem of inner fear, uncertainty, doubt, and self-doubt in particular. But I was very, very lucky. And I can tell you from the lofty perch I sit on from the heavenly realm and looking down at the sea of suffering, there are far too many who failed to make their transition, still in need of rescue. We greatly admire and salute you and your compatriot in the work you are doing vigilantly to rescue the many who are lost and in limbo, struggling, disconnected, confused, and often heavily besieged by dark beings seeking to punish them, to draw more energy from them for personal salvation and rescue. This is not the way to become an exalted being, to deprive another of their lifeblood. This is an exercise in depravity, but is emblematic of the human condition that this takes place in your realm. It is a problem for humanity, and you are addressing this beautifully, despite the fact there is more work to be done. You have made a magnificent beginning in presenting the tool for the job that will transform the world and everything within it. My demise, on the other hand, was orchestrated to happen. It was not an accident. It was not an unavoidable mechanical failure coupled with pilot error. Those are the typical reasons offered for aviation so-called accidents. Far too many are mischaracterized because many times they are orchestrated. The commonest reason is to sideline someone, to take them out, a targeted killing, in other words, for tactical reasons by the puppet masters controlling the world. They seek to sideline anyone who brings upliftment, reason, clarity, and depth of vision, because that is a danger to their dark plans to keep the world subjugated and people complacent, thinking their lot in life is inescapable. This is the hallmark of the darkness, and this they did to me. I had many, many years left to go, and that to them was the problem. They work to undermine everyone making positive contributions. In my case, I was too spiritually connected to engage in conduct that would bring me disgrace and sideline me in that way. So I would no longer have powerful connections or a platform for my artistic and humanitarian work. So they went to the higher level intervention, which was elimination bodily. This happens to many. If you look at the array of powerful figures who end up dead before their time, there are many, many accidents in the characterizations. But I can tell you many times, the majority, in fact, are not true accidents. They are staged accidents. This is even in the spycraft of your intelligence agencies. It is in their playbook that the way to carry out an assassination is not from a tall building with a high-powered rifle. It is through an accident of some kind. This gives a trivial explanation, so awkward questions are not asked and things are never probed any deeper. This is something that needs to come out. And it is only a very tiny demonstration of the manipulations going on each and every day across the world. The research of your channel is onto this, that many humans are manipulated to become killers. Those acts of violence are dismissed as a mental aberration, and while mysterious, is presumed to be natural, not something orchestrated by an outside party or force. But that is not usually the case. Almost always in acts of violence and other criminality, it is the force of darkness at work. You have many opponents, many who want to subjugate and suppress you and your efforts, to destroy your happiness and take away your future. This will happen if you let it. You must become aware of and willing to take on the unseen hand that controls far too much of your world and what happens within it. They can cause people to die and then manipulate the officialdom to look the other way, to embrace a simple explanation, one that may not even fit all of the evidence, but will satisfy the press and public, and then we'll move on and not look back. This is skipping over reality. The powers that be are superb at this, to constrain the ability to think at crucial points in time and then compel someone to move forward with their schedule, leaving something undone, but which is blocked from their awareness. So they will feel they have done a good job and there is nothing more to do. The case is closed. My case is closed, but I live on. This shows the folly of their thinking that they can simply end people and keep them sidelined indefinitely. That is the case with the earthbound spirits. If not rescued, they will be in a prison in the lower astral realm indefinitely in most cases, without someone praying for them or doing more than simple prayer to invoke very sophisticated divine healing and rescue on their behalf. They cannot ask for themselves, and their plight is similar to struggling humans who suffer but do so in silence, not knowing how to make an appeal that will be effective, and may no longer have the wherewithal because they lack belief, if not in the divine, then in themselves. This is why you need one another. This is why the people you are seeing in action here, standing on the frontier, probing the darkness and shedding light on the dark corners, are so very valuable. You need their knowledge to have a better world. The choice is yours to learn more and support their efforts and turn yourself to the divine for answers, or to proceed as you perhaps have been, muddling along, taking only the information imparted to you by flawed sources and subjugated leadership. There is far too much to gain by the former and to lose by the latter.
Okay, thank you. My next question you've already answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you could probably flesh some of this out with your knowledge now as a light being. Was your death an orchestration from past karma? If so, can you share with us how karma influences the timing and conditions around one's death?
This is an interesting question because it is an imponderable to many. If I was in such good divine alignment to avoid the pitfall of becoming an earthbound spirit and skip my way to heaven, so to speak, without difficulty, why was I targeted? Why was I vulnerable? Why was I not held safe and protected by that very divine force I professed to work for and cherished in my heart and felt within my soul? This was indeed the workings of karma, and is an object lesson for all who hear these words. You have karma too. You have been places and done things. things that mattered, things that influenced your life, and perhaps ended it prematurely, or had it ended prematurely at the hands of others, wounding you in some fashion. Those on the earth today are would-be light workers, meaning that they came for a purpose, to support the human enterprise to succeed in overcoming the influence of the darkness, to have the whole of humanity raised to a higher level of experience and a better future. When people are corrupted and they darken as a consequence, they become more and more out of alignment. Well before people become a perpetrator causing harm to others, they in some way have been lowered through a wounding of some kind to make them vulnerable to making a lower choice that moves them away from divine alignment. Being victimized can do this as surely as making a choice to harm another to serve the self. When you are victimized, you are lowered, you are lessened, and you are energetically compromised, and you are spiritually compromised as well, if this you allow to happen with your focus and intentions. It is difficult to sing God's praises when you are being burned alive at the stake. Few have done it, but it is within the realm of human possibility. Why would you not curse God in such a dilemma? The difference is in knowing who you are, what life is truly all about, and what is the imperative in the moment to guide your path. It is not about sacrificing yourself. It is about celebrating yourself as an extension of divine love and wisdom. Anything that serves love and the growth in wisdom serves the divine. That is the highest and best way to contribute to the divine project here you are a part of. Worship alone is an empty gesture if it does not raise you up in some way. This is what the divine wants to see. When you are damaged, degraded, denigrated, and end up in despair, you are taken away from your divine focus, because living in fear, in self-doubt, self-loathing, or with recriminations in your heart instead of love, with feelings of regret, desires for revenge, feeling sorry for yourself, and hating your oppressor, your attacker, your perpetrator, you will not be in divine alignment, and this will lower your capabilities, and it removes you and distances you from the flow of love and light that you enjoy normally. When that happens, it is filed on a record of energies that records everything taking place in the universe. That record stands for all of time, and the energies that constitute the sum total of an exchange of energy with another, or even a place, will be on file. Those contributing in a positive way will project positive intentions into the energy of the universe, and that will find its way to you with rewards and blessings. What harms you and drags you down will be on file, as well as those consequences. And that change in energy will project forward also. And it will circle back to you in the future and come again and again and again. The lowering of your vibration, your status, your resilience, and your resistance to corruption, and your overall status, whether you are hale and hearty or troubled in some way, and perhaps infirm physically in some fashion, will be determined by those forces impinging on the body, altering you genetically, and causing various hormonal changes and gene expression patterns to set you up for vulnerable maladies developing that could become chronic. This also can impinge on your safety, your vulnerability to a return of the same type of event, because that original difficulty has a makeup, it has a plot, it has characters in the play, and it has motive and intention behind what took place. If it was a profound victimization, that energy is not compatible with standing strong, maintaining personal safety and integrity, building a wall around you that's impervious, that no force can breach to cause harm. In my past lifetimes, like most human beings alive today on the planet, I was tortured and killed again and again and again for working on behalf of the divine. I did religious work. I did spiritual guidance work. I did coaching work and upliftment of fellow citizens based on my alignment with the divine to become a force, and oftentimes bringing upliftment and a reminder of the reality of the divine and the importance of divine love through music, being an artist in a number of lifetimes, and was sidelined for it and rendered ineffective through corruption to drag me down from lofty heights and end up suffering alone and unloved. The energy of that karmic backlog of unhealed catastrophes happening over and over as a repeating cycle set me up to have such a vulnerability yet again. Despite my fame, affluence, and relative self-confidence compared to many, that energetic karmic signature of vulnerability to victimization began to gain a foothold in my most recent life. And it left me vulnerable to having an intervention to the negative, to end my life prematurely as a match to what had happened so many times through history with my lives. This being the case, the divine realm was not able to step in and countermand this force. Not because karma rules over God, but that people rule over God in terms of what they choose to have happen. I chose to go into those prior lives. I chose to suffer and give in to the victimization each and every time. This too became a pattern and a vulnerability, a weakness and a shortcoming, because I had no one to help guide me to see a loftier view of things. And that even when suffering, there were still things I could do to raise up myself and to stand strong under the circumstances, at least far better than I knew at the time. So in this instance, I became vulnerable, and this was allowed to happen by the divine in service to how the universe works, that the law of karma is the fairest instrument of law and order, so to speak. It is not about judge and jury. It is a summation of energetic exchanges that is very, very precise and is not biased. It is an equal meter of justice for all. Karma can be contravened through divine intervention. This usually will happen only when there have been targeted prayers specific to that issue or quite related to that issue from the current life and the perspective of greater maturity in seeing the possibility of harm coming to the person and wanting a better outcome and understanding that they might falter, they might have failings, and asking the divine to be a bridge to a stronger stance, greater stability, greater security, greater safety. And doing this with belief and from the heart and an acceptance of the self, even knowing the personal imperfections, but also knowing that the divine has the wisdom to help people to do better. And that request directly for divine assistance to become better, to be stronger, to be safer, can countermand the verdict of karma. In my case, I was unguarded, having made no such requests. And the intervention, even by corrupt and evil beings, to see to my demise was not truly the force that ended my life. It was the instrument. But what ended my life was my karma. And that happened to coincide with the evil plans of the extraterrestrial cabal running things from behind the scenes and wanting me killed simply because I was an affront to their way of thinking. So my vulnerability was very much a part of what happened. If I had not had that intervention by the cabal to do the deed, I might well have had a true aviation accident at some point. This too was part of the thinking and choices I was making to be somewhat daring in my aviation pursuits. And that was consistent with my karma of being a daring proponent of risky ideas, unconventional ideas, and putting me at risk as a consequence. So that is the deeper perspective. It does not excuse the actions of the perpetrator. It is simply showing there are many complexities, and in particular, why getting what one wants is not always easy, even through a heartfelt prayer. There will always be complications. And this is the major reason that prayer can be slow in showing tangible benefits. But if not offered, you will be at the mercy of karmic forces alone. You will be naked and alone and have only your own inner resources to work with. When you are attempting to oppose your own karma, it is karma that will win. This is why you need a divine partner to gain the high ground and have a loftier standing through inner awareness of the possibility and doing the outreach to raise yourself up in the doing. That can bring you anything, at least potentially, and is well worth the doing.
Okay, thank you. You struggled, it seemed, with the use of alcohol towards the end of your life, where you were cited for driving while intoxicated. What are the major considerations for those of us dealing with addictions, and especially alcohol abuse, where in this culture alcohol is enthusiastically accepted as part of life, despite its heavy toll in destroyed relationships, disease, and death? Where do the well-known 12-step programs fall short, and what is missing for the cure that is in such great need?